Ibrahim Traoré was concluding his morning briefing when the report about the gold mine disaster reached him. At the time, he couldn't have known it marked only the beginning. Once he uncovered the truth, retreat would no longer be an option. In the early morning calm of Ouagadougou, the presidential palace remained cool, the day's heat still distant. Traoré sat at his desk, studying security updates from the north, where extremist activity demanded continuous attention. 8 months into his leadership, he had formed a structured rhythm: security meetings at sunrise, economic reviews mid-morning, diplomacy in the afternoon, the tempo of a government striving to shape a future for a fractured nation. Defense Minister Kabore entered unannounced, a break in protocol that screamed urgency. "Mr. President, there's been an accident at the Busura mine," he said, placing an initial report on the desk. 17 confirmed dead, more possibly still trapped. Traoré reviewed the report. The Busura mine, run by Goldtech International, a French-Canadian joint venture, was Burkina Faso's leading gold producer, responsible for nearly 40% of the nation's declared gold exports. The report cited a contained blast that led to a partial collapse deep within the mine. "Are rescue efforts underway?" Traoré asked, already picking up his phone. "Goldtech has sent their emergency team," Kabore replied. "They're asking us to keep state forces away to avoid interfering." Traoré caught a shift in Kabore's tone and looked up. "You don't sound convinced." The minister hesitated, glancing at the door to confirm they were alone. "Might be nothing, sir, but my cousin does security at Busura. He called me off the record, said Goldtech staff were shredding papers before help even showed up." Traoré placed the report down, instincts sharpened by military service flaring. In 8 months as president, he'd learned to trust those instincts. "Get transport ready," he said, rising. "I'm going to Busura." "Sir," Kabore warned, "Goldtech strictly requested—" "They don't govern this land," Traoré cut in. "Or at least they shouldn't." Kabore nodded, a faint approving smile forming. "Helicopter will be ready in 30. As Kabore stepped out to coordinate, Traoré approached the window, gazing over a stirring Ouagadougou. The city blended colonial relics with new structures, local markets beside foreign-owned stores. Even the palace bore traces of French rule, its grandeur sharply contrasting the poverty still gripping much of the nation. Burkina Faso possessed immense gold reserves, one of the fastest-growing producers globally for 10 years. Yet that wealth had never lifted its people. The math didn't add up, and Traoré, once a math teacher before soldiering, had never been comfortable with unbalanced equations. His aide entered, adding a new variable to the already troubling equation. "Mr. President, the French ambassador urgently requested a meeting before your departure for Busura." "Did he give a reason?" "Only that it involves diplomatic protocol during industrial accidents with foreign firms." Traoré glanced at his watch. "Tell him I've already left. Protocols can wait until I've seen the damage myself." 2 hours later, Traoré's chopper neared the Busura mining zone in Burkina Faso's northeast. From above, the facility was massive, an industrial sprawl etched into dry terrain, dotted with processing units, admin blocks, and worker quarters over several square kilometers. At the center, the mine's main entrance was ringed with emergency teams and vehicles. As they circled to land, Traoré spotted the company's private guards forming a barricade, keeping journalists and residents away. His military aide pointed to another helicopter already grounded, bearing French diplomatic insignia. "Interesting," Traoré said. "The French ambassador beats the president of Burkina Faso to the scene." Upon landing, a group of executives in hard hats rushed over. Leading them was Philippe Marron, Goldtech's regional director, a tall, silver-haired Frenchman radiating the authority of someone rarely challenged. Next to him stood Jean-Claude Laval, the French ambassador, whose presence confirmed Traoré's suspicion. This incident wasn't routine. "President Traoré," Maron said, his smile tight and hollow. "A surprise visit. We're in the midst of a sensitive rescue mission." "Then I won't delay you," Traoré replied calmly. "I'm here to witness the rescue efforts and hear from the survivors directly." Ambassador Laval stepped in. "Mr. President, perhaps a briefing in the admin building? The site is stable, but it's hazardous for anyone lacking mining experience." Traoré noted the polished delivery. "Ambassador, I didn't realize mine safety was now under diplomatic authority." Laval's smile grew strained. "France holds deep mining experience. We're just helping a French company in crisis." Before Traoré could reply, a disturbance erupted by the mine entrance. Workers were emerging with a stretcher. Without pause, Traoré moved straight toward the stretcher, brushing off the executive's objections. The wounded miner was semi-conscious, his face coated in coal-black dust, with clear tear streaks down his cheeks. A medic was providing oxygen and checking his vitals. Traoré crouched by the stretcher. "What's your name, brother?" The miner's eyes blinked open, struggling to focus on Traoré's face. Slowly, recognition set in. "Ouedraogo," he murmured through the mask. "Moussa Ouedraogo." "What happened below, Moussa?" Moussa's eyes flicked nervously towards the nearby executives. Then he clutched Traoré's hand with unexpected force. "Not Section 7, he gasped. "They said it was 7, but it was 12. They're not telling the truth." Maron stepped up. "The man's in shock, clearly disoriented. Section 12 isn't even operational, it's under maintenance." Traoré kept eye contact with the miner. "Then why lie about where the collapse happened?" Ouedraogo's voice fell to a whisper, forcing Traoré to lean in. "The children," he breathed. "They're hiding the children." Before Traoré could question further, medics rushed the stretcher to a nearby ambulance. He turned to Maron, whose calm had begun to falter. "I'm going down," Traoré declared. "To Section 12. "That's out of the question," Maron snapped. "The mine's not stable. We can't ensure your safety." "I wasn't requesting approval," Traoré replied. Ambassador Laval interjected, his diplomatic polish beginning to crack. "Mr. President, this raises serious legal risks. The contract with Goldtech restricts government interference during corporate-led emergencies." "Show me that clause," Traoré challenged. "I don't remember surrendering my right to investigate a disaster in my own country." A heavy silence followed. His security team edged closer, hands near their weapons. Goldtech's guards mirrored the motion. At last, Maron softened his tone. "Maybe a compromise. We'll show you footage from every mine section, full transparency, no danger." "Thanks for the gesture," Traoré replied. "I'll look at your footage after I see Section 12 with my own eyes." Seeing that Traoré wouldn't back down, Maron reluctantly arranged for a mine engineer to guide him. As they got the elevator ready to descend, Ambassador Laval made a last-ditch effort. "Your predecessor valued corporate independence in the mining industry," he said quietly. "That's what attracted foreign investment to Burkina Faso." Traoré met his eyes. "My predecessor isn't in charge anymore, and I'm starting to see why." The descent was quick and jarring. The elevator rattled as it plunged down into the depths, the air becoming hotter and heavier with every passing moment. Traoré had experienced bunkers, caves, and tunnels during his time in the army, but nothing like this, a plunge into the Earth's core, where people toiled in a place nature never meant humans to survive. The mine engineer, a tense young Frenchman named Gerard, explained they were moving past the main commercial zones, where active extraction occurred. "Section 12 is one of the deepest exploratory areas," he said, his voice echoing in the metal lift. "But as Mr. Maron mentioned, it's not in use right now." "Then there's no harm in showing me an unused section," Traoré replied. Gerard hesitated. "It's standard procedure, sir." "I know all about procedures, Mr. Gerard," Traoré said. I was a military man before becoming president. The lift halted 700 meters underground. When the doors slid open, a dark tunnel appeared, dimly lit and braced with steel. The air was thick and oppressive, filled with dust and the acrid smell of explosives used to break through the rock. "This is Section 8, Gerard said, glancing at a tablet. "The collapse occurred in Section 7, just up ahead. We shouldn't continue from here." Traoré turned to his military aide. "Captain, which section did the miner mention?" "Section 12, Mr. President." "How far is Section 12 from here?" Traoré asked. Gerard squirmed. "Down further and to the east, but I'm not authorized to take you there." Traoré examined the tunnel map fixed to the wall. "Looks simple enough, we'll go ourselves." "Sir, I can't allow—" "Captain," Traoré cut him off, addressing his aide. "See to it Mr. Gerard stays comfortable while we take a look at Section 12. The captain caught on quickly, placing himself between Gerard and any nearby radios or phones. Gerard objected verbally, but didn't try to stop them, as Traoré and 2 security men moved deeper into the labyrinth. Following the map, they wound through tighter passageways until they came upon another lift marked Sections 9 to 14, authorized personnel only. Using the engineer's access badge they'd quietly taken, they descended even further. This new tunnel felt drastically different, barely reinforced, dimly lit. It clearly wasn't designed for routine work or safety inspections. They traced the path to Section 12. No sign of a collapse, no rescue teams had been here. Just a thick steel door with an electronic lock. The access card failed. "Break it open," Traoré commanded. His guards paused for only a second, then forced the door with combined effort. With a groan of strained metal, the lock gave way. What lay beyond would remain etched in Traoré's memory forever. Section 12 wasn't an operational mine, it was a forced labor camp. The vast chamber held rows of crude sleeping mats on bare rock, surrounded by scattered food wrappers and water jugs. Most alarming were the tiny helmets and hand tools, made for children. "My God," one officer murmured. Traoré walked through, silently filming every detail with his phone. In a corner they found a logbook, its tone cold and detached. It listed worker output by age, including quotas for children as young as 9. "They're sending kids into the smallest gold seams," Traoré said, voice hard with restrained anger, "where grown men can't fit." As they explored a side tunnel, they heard footsteps and voices heading their way. Traoré and his team hid as a group of Gold Tech guards entered, led by a supervisor whispering frantically into a radio. "Site secured," he said. "We've cleared the evidence as instructed. The president won't find a trace." "Have you located the missing workers?" came a voice through the radio, unmistakably Marin. "Negative," the supervisor replied. "After the blast, about 15 kids ran into the escape tunnels. We're still hunting them." "Find them. They must not talk. Understood?" That was enough. Traoré stepped from the shadows, flanked by his armed guards. "Those children are now under my protection," he declared. The Gold Tech personnel froze, then cautiously raised their hands. Marin's voice crackled urgently through the radio, growing more frantic by the second. Traoré picked it up. "Your superior has a lot to explain," he said coldly. "Mr. Maron, I recommend you get ready for a very uncomfortable conversation." Above ground, everything had changed. News of the president's discovery had leaked, drawing a flood of locals and miners' families demanding explanations. Many were parents of children who vanished after being enrolled in so-called training programs run by Gold Tech. Marin and the French ambassador were preparing to leave when Traoré stepped out of the mine. He carried undeniable proof: files, images, and most damning of all, 3 frightened but living children found hiding inside a ventilation duct. "Take them into custody," Traoré commanded, pointing directly at Marin and the Goldtech officials. Charges will include child labor abuse, trafficking, and criminal negligence leading to death. Ambassador Laval rushed forward, anger overpowering diplomatic decorum. "You can't arrest them. They have protection under our mining accords." "Show me," Traoré replied, his voice cold, "where child slavery is covered in those agreements. This company ran a labor camp on our soil. There's no immunity for that." As the executives were led away in handcuffs, Traoré turned to the swelling crowd. Many were recording on their phones, the footage already flooding social media. "Today," he announced, voice booming, "we've uncovered a crime that cannot be excused. Our children, made to suffer in conditions no person should face, just to dig up gold that never enriched us," he declared. Then, gesturing to the mine entrance, he added, "The real explosion wasn't structural. It was children trying to flee captivity. And instead of saving them, this company tried to erase them." That night dragged on, tense and exhausting. Traoré stayed at the site, personally directing rescue teams as they worked through the dark. By sunrise, 23 children had been pulled from hidden corners of the mine. 5 were recovered as bodies, victims of the blast or fatal injuries during their desperate escape. Each child's story was more painful than the one before. Most had been lured from poor villages with promises of jobs and schooling. Instead, they were trapped, lowered into the depths daily to crawl through tight shafts adults couldn't reach, scraping gold from thin seams with tiny tools. "How long has this been going on?" Traoré asked one of the engineers who'd turned whistleblower after witnessing the children being pulled out. "Years," the man said quietly. "Not just this mine. Most of the big ones do it, though not always on this scale. It's an open secret in the business." "An open secret?" Traoré repeated, stunned. "And my government had no idea?" The engineer looked uneasy. "Your predecessors, they had deals. Some officials were well paid to ignore it. In the days that followed, Bussoura's horror revealed its full scope. Global investigators found similar setups at other gold-tech mines throughout Burkina Faso. Documents uncovered a deliberate strategy of using child labor to access tight gold seams unreachable by adults. The most incriminating evidence came from the financial ledgers. Goldtech had claimed modest profits on paper, but internal files showed billions in hidden gold output, smuggled abroad using diplomatic cover. Traoré called an emergency cabinet session. Some ministers urged restraint, warning of financial fallout if foreign mining firms were pushed too hard. "These companies create jobs," the finance minister said. "They pay taxes, fund development. Without them, the economy will sink." "Jobs for who?" Traoré shot back. "Adults risking their lives for scraps while children are enslaved underground? And those taxes? We've uncovered massive underreporting. As for infrastructure, they build roads to their mines, not to our villages. Our people see scraps at best." Still, the foreign minister cut in, "We must stay realistic. The West won't tolerate interference with their mining stakes." Traoré stood, silencing the room. "I didn't come to this office to be reasonable about child slavery. Begin preparations. We're nationalizing everything." A week after the Bussoura revelations, Ibrahim Traoré stood before the nation from the presidential palace. Millions tuned in by TV and radio. Dressed in his usual military fatigues, not a suit, he addressed his people with honesty and resolve. "People of Burkina Faso," he began, "for years we've been told foreign corporations are the path to prosperity, that we need their money and know how to develop our land. But after decades of this deal, we stay poor while our gold builds towers in Paris and Toronto." He held up a chunk of raw gold. "This was dug up by a child at Bussoura, a child who should have been in school, playing, dreaming of his future. Instead, he was buried in darkness, pulling out wealth he'd never benefit from." Traoré paused, letting the message land. Today I announce the immediate nationalization of every gold mine in Burkina Faso. Foreign firms will have 30 days to hand over control to our new National Resource Authority. They'll be fairly paid for real investments, but not for stolen riches. He then laid out the roadmap. Mines run by Burkinabe engineers and workers, profits directed into schools, hospitals, and roads. Transparent records would guarantee the wealth served the people, not corrupt insiders or overseas investors. This won't be easy, he admitted. Those who gained from the old system will push back. Economic hardship will come as we shift to self-managed operations. But the alternative, letting our children be exploited for someone else's profit, is beyond unacceptable. The global response came fast and as expected. Western nations denounced the move as anti-investment. Financial bodies warned of collapse. Former colonial powers threatened sanctions and isolation. He held up a chunk of raw gold. This was dug up by a child at Busura, a child who should have been in school, playing, dreaming of his future. Instead, he was buried in darkness, pulling out wealth he'd never benefit from. Traoré paused, letting the message land. Today, I announce the immediate nationalization of every gold mine in Burkina Faso. Foreign firms will have 30 days to hand over control to our new National Resource Authority. They'll be fairly paid for real investments, but not for stolen riches. He then laid out the roadmap. Mines run by Burkinabe engineers and workers, profits directed into schools, hospitals, and roads. Transparent records would guarantee the wealth served the people, not corrupt insiders or overseas investors. This won't be easy, he admitted. Those who gained from the old system will push back. Economic hardship will come as we shift to self-managed operations. But the alternative, letting our children be exploited for someone else's profit, is beyond unacceptable. The global response came fast and as expected. Western nations denounced the move as anti-investment. Financial bodies warned of collapse. Former colonial powers threatened sanctions and isolation. France reacted with particular fury, recalling its ambassador and locking Burkina Faso's funds in French banks. This one-sided decision breaks multiple bilateral pacts, said France's foreign minister. President Traoré will learn that international contracts aren't rewritten without a price. But something surprising followed. Neighboring countries like Mali, Niger, and Guinea voiced support. China and Russia offered mining expertise. Most powerful of all, the Burkinabe people stood behind the decision, swept up in a national pride not felt in decades. As Western banks cut off transactions, grassroots solutions emerged. Communities created local economies. When foreign aid was threatened, villages pooled what they had to fund healthcare and education. A wave of unity spread, dissolving tribal and regional divides. The shift wasn't smooth. Many foreign experts left, taking their technical know-how. Equipment supply chains broke down. Gold output briefly dropped. But Traoré had seen this coming. He launched fast-track training schemes and invited Burkinabe engineers working overseas to return, appealing to their patriotism and offering good pay. He secured new equipment sources through partners outside the Western Bloc. Most importantly, he was honest. He kept the people fully informed about the hardships ahead, explaining that short-term pain was the price of long-term freedom. 3 months later, Traoré welcomed global journalists to Busura. Now run by Burkinabe staff, the mine had changed dramatically, with better safety, fair wages, and, most importantly, a portion of the profits building a nearby school where rescued children now studied. "We call this the Golden Palace," Traoré told the press, motioning toward the humble school. "Not for its luxury, but because it shows what our gold is really worth, the future of our children." A French journalist raised a question. President Traoré, Western analysts say your mining sector will fail without foreign know-how. What's your reply? Traoré smiled. The same experts who created child labor camps? I believe we'll survive just fine without them. He pointed to the mining activity visible through the window. Look outside. The same Burkina Faso workers who did all the real labor before are still here. What's changed is who actually profits from that labor. Another reporter asked, with France freezing your assets in Europe, how will you handle the sanctions? Traoré answered by remembering what real wealth is. Is it digits in a foreign bank, or the gold under our feet, the talents of our people, and our right to choose our path? The press briefing ended, but Traoré stayed behind at the school. He watched the same children who once mined in the dark, now learning to read in daylight. The contrast was profound, from suffering to hope, from abuse to promise. A boy, around 11, walked up. Faint scars still marked his young face. Mr. President, he said, my dad works at the mine now. He told me the gold used to make white men rich. Now it makes our country strong. Is that true? Traoré knelt, meeting him at eye level. What's your name? Thomas, sir, like Thomas Sankara. Traoré smiled at the tribute. Well, Thomas, your father's right. But the true strength isn't just the gold. It's knowing it's ours and choosing what to do with it. The boy nodded seriously. When I grow up, I want to be an engineer, to find safer ways to get the gold without going underground. Then study hard, Traoré replied. Burkina Faso will need engineers just like you. As Traoré stepped out of the school, he reflected on the path that began with a simple incident report on his desk. When he first heard about the mine explosion, he had no idea it was just the start. The road forward would be difficult. Western nations wouldn't surrender their grip on African wealth without resistance, economic retaliation, political meddling, even attempts to unseat him. All were likely. Yet change was already in motion. Other African countries began reassessing their own mining deals, inspired by Burkina Faso's stand. A movement was rising, not shaped by politicians or ideology, but by the shared realization that sovereignty is hollow if a nation's riches enrich others while its own children starve. 6 months after nationalization, gold production had bounced back to prior levels, but this time, with one major difference, the profits stayed within the country. New schools weren't just rising near Busura, they were being built nationwide. Clinics and hospitals were expanding. Stalled infrastructure projects were finally gaining traction. More importantly, a new sense of possibility had taken hold. Children once destined for mine shafts were now in classrooms, imagining futures as engineers, doctors, or educators. Workers who had once labored for foreign firms now felt genuine ownership in what they did, pride in helping build their own nation, not someone else's fortune. From his office in the presidential palace, Traoré read regular reports on the transformation. The economic numbers were promising, but it was the human stories that meant more. Children who once mined now graduating, villages using mining funds for clean water, young Burkina Faso engineers returning home to help rebuild. One evening, while reviewing the latest updates, his aide entered with a surprise. A visitor. Moussa Ouedraogo, the miner whose whispered warning had first exposed the truth of Section 12. Mr. President, Ouedraogo said, standing humbly in worn clothes, I came to say thank you. One of the children you saved, he's my nephew. He's in school now. It's me who should thank you, Traoré replied. It was your bravery that started it all. Ouedraogo shook his head. I just spoke. Others heard the truth too, but you were the one who acted. As Traoré watched the man walk away, he reflected on choices, the small, pivotal ones that shape a leader's legacy. The decision to investigate instead of trust reports, to challenge the powerful instead of appease them, to place children's lives above economic convenience. When he saw those children trapped underground, only one path felt bearable. And though challenges remained, with Western pressure unrelenting and daily obstacles ahead, Ibrahim Traoré knew, without question, that he had chosen the only path worth taking. The gold of Burkina Faso would, at last, serve its people, and for Traoré, that was a price worth paying.